Well, now the angry cabbies who claim their livelihoods are at risk. Drivers say ride-sharing company Uber is threatening the very future of their industry. Reporter Steve Marshall's been investigating.
They're our bloody laws. This is our country. Respect it.
You're not accredited. F off out of the country.
It's the battle for paying passengers.
You get out of my building!
He headbutted me, he spat at me.
Accelerating towards all-out war.
I'm ready to go to the grave, but on my terms.
As old-school cabbies,
the government has to shut it down. They're illegal.
Vow to defend their turf against a radical newcomer.
It's not Uber to blame.
Uber should be kicked out of this country for basically being a criminal organisation.
If I wanted to become a taxi driver, I'd have to do a fair bit of study and take a knowledge test. But since the arrival of Uber in Australia, all I need now is my own car and a smartphone, and I'm up and running as an UberX driver. But that's little comfort to a taxi industry that's being driven into the ground by a revolutionary new rival. It's called ride-sharing. Passengers using their smartphones to connect with private drivers. All you need to do is download the user-friendly phone app, request a ride, and a car finds you within minutes.
Hi, Avi. That was quick. Thanks very much.
It's bringing competition to an industry which has been hopeless.
Taxis are expensive, so if Uber gives an alternative, why not?
Payment is made via pre-arranged credit card transactions. The driver keeps 80% of the fare. The rest goes to the US-based Uber.
UberX is clearly the way to go in the future.
In Australia, more than 15,000 UberX drivers have provided over 5 million rides. But the slick online promos are a far cry from this ugly scene.
You get out of my building! Just do it now.
An Uber employee confronts a taxi driver. The incident highlighting the tension between the competitors. But more on what happened here later.
See, this is the Uber.
There's 3 types of Uber ride-sharing services, but it's the UberX model that's causing controversy, where everyday car owners pick up paying passengers. UberX has blindsided lawmakers and is stealing taxi owner-operators' livelihoods.
The worst thing you can see is your loved one going through a difficult situation.
Tonight, a group of taxi drivers and owners gathered to share their pain and strain.
I don't believe anybody has the right to walk into my country and say, I don't like your laws, I will make them up as I go along.
Sandy owns and leases a Victorian taxi licence plate to drivers. She paid more for the plate than she did for her house. But now Sandy says the cheaper UberX model has slashed the value of her investment.
I was going to be a self-funded retiree, which is good for the economy. I can't even go on a pension. We have to keep working. It's not fair, it's unjust, and it's un-Australian. I'm sorry.
It's just absolutely decimated our industry with sort of cut-price taxi services. And,
it's another quiet night behind the wheel for Melbourne taxi owner Andrew. He says the impact of UberX has been catastrophic, especially on top of the state government releasing more taxi licences, putting more taxis on the road.
I borrowed $800,000 against my house to buy 3 taxi licences, and the house was nearly paid off, it was nearly owned. So obviously with everything that's happened with Uber, my licence has collapsed in value, and I've been forced to sell my house to satisfy the bank.
I still consider myself as a taxi driver.
Avi is now an UberX driver after spending 13 years behind the wheel of a taxi. Now he doesn't have to pay the $120 a day to taxi owners to drive their cars.
You can start driving whenever you want. You can finish whenever you want. You don't have to work in a time frame.
Avi understands the anger brewing in the taxi ranks, but says UberX isn't to blame.
They can get an UberX roughly about 80% for what it costs to ride in a taxi. And they're happy with this service because it's a cheaper service. The drivers are happy because they don't have the same costs. as the taxi drivers, and it makes everybody happy, and that's what the taxi industry should have done many, many years ago.
Will I find all of this in an Uber car?
No.
The taxi industry is bogged down by an expensive regulatory regime, as owner-operator Sharon points out.
Only we're paying $48,000 a year per car just up front in licences. That's radio fees, because we have to have an alarm system for the taxi drivers, so you have to be affiliated to a network. That's $8,000 a year. The taxi plates are around $22,000 a year to lease. We have workers' comp for all our drivers. That's $2,100 a car. We have to have a camera and the meter and everything fitted in the car. The cameras are about $3,500.
And what does an Uber operator pay?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
UberX's legal status is unclear, as state governments try and work out how to handle the new transport player. The company is fighting court battles, including challenging an ATO ruling its drivers must pay GST. UberX drivers have been charged for breaching taxi laws in Western Australia, and the Queensland government has issued $1.7 million in fines to its drivers. But the Uber company pays the drivers' fines. It's backed by Google and valued at more than $50 billion.
They're paying the drivers' fines, and they're actually getting the drivers to go out and re-offend.
Where are my keys? They're on the floor. Okay. So you're not getting in the car, you're not driving anywhere.
You're watching a bizarre video of Sydney taxi drivers attempting to perform a citizen's arrest on an UberX driver. The man overseeing the arrest is Russell Howarth, a former British police officer and former Uber employee.
Let's just calm everything down, okay?
There's a reasonable expectation that the person driving the car is licensed to do it. And you would have a reasonable expectation that person is of good character and not likely to be a recent offender of violent assault or worse. With the Uber app, that's a bit different because basically they do the checks they want to. There's no oversight. There's no regulation.
There's no cameras in UberX. Any girl could get mauled.
You don't know taxi drivers anyway, so what's the difference really between a taxi driver and an Uberer?
Uber says it carries out criminal and driving history checks for its drivers. It also provides $1 million insurance cover for them. Although this Uber driver agreement states the driver is liable for all client claims of damage and/or injury.
Get out of my building! Get your out!
Look at that.
Do it now.
I'm going now.
Do it now.
Do it now. You're assaulting witnesses. Yeah, video.
Get out.
That's all.
Get your out!
Look at that.
Do it now.
I'm going
An argument over insurance sparked that ugly confrontation between the Uber employee and taxi driver David. David says he infiltrated the Uber induction session to highlight Uber's insurance flaws to new drivers.
In your fine print, you say that the driver is not covered, and you say that the client, the passenger, is not covered in fine print. I said, isn't that correct? He got upset. He came up to me. He headbutted me. He spat at me. He chested me. He grabbed me. He pushed me.
Despite UberX's wobbly legal status here, one of Australia's largest insurance companies is willing to insure UberX drivers. NRMA boss Cheryl Chantry says the cover is for occasional business use only.
We define occasional as meaning not full-time. Given that this is a new and emerging part of the economy, we've just made the decision to keep a bit of flexibility around that definition as it unfolds and the debate emerges.
Arvi's told his insurance company he's an UberX driver, but it's impossible to know how many of the 15,000 UberX drivers have done the same and are covered. Insurance becomes even murkier, with UberX drivers subcontracting their cars to less experienced drivers. Uber now operates in more than 50 countries, but it's not always welcome. This is Mexico City, where an angry crowd attacked Uber drivers with clubs and stones. Explosive scenes in Paris too, where furious taxi drivers damaged 70 Uber cars.
Enforce the law! A regulator that doesn't regulate.
Now Australian taxi drivers warn they too are on a collision course with their UberX rivals if the ride-sharing service isn't shut down.
I can assure you though, I go down, somebody else will go down with me as well.
If your life is on the line, some of them are going to take somebody with them. I don't mean as in another life, but they're going to go down with the fight.
That's not something that's going to stop me.
Or stop people catching Uber.
No, it's not going to stop people. People will still get to catch Uber because it's convenient service, it's a good service, it's reliable, it's cheap, and people will keep using it.
Uber Australia's CEO David Rorsheim declined to be interviewed and did not respond to written questions about UberX operations.